Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. This week, I was given the wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to Lisa Clunie. Now, Lisa and I met through a local network to me, which has been really, really fun. But we were going to talk about branding and marketing on this episode. And it's been great fun. And I hope you're going to take some value from this episode and this interview. So I'm now going to hand over to her to explain a little bit more about what she does and why she does it. And I'll see you very soon.
So I'm Lisa Clunie. I own two businesses. One's Thrive Studios, which is a design agency specialising in branding. And then I have also another business, which was started end of last year, which is called Thriving Brand, which is all about helping people do their branding themselves. So I'm a coach and mentor to help them put themselves out there. I do a little bit of mindset work with them. But I've been in branding and design for just under 30 years. So I've worked in agencies in London, worked in big corporates, I worked in small agencies, and then had my own business for 10 years.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for coming back and joining me. And, just for the audience's sake, myself and you have obviously had another conversation that unfortunately won't see the light of day because there was a tech issue. And so I really appreciate you coming back and joining me. But, one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring you on in the first place was because I think there's so many business owners who struggle with the branding side of their business, right? There's so many people who maybe leave it to the last minute, or they half-ass their logo, or they're like, as long as we've got one, it'll be fine. But what can be some of the pitfalls that you've seen with your experience and your work that can happen if someone does choose to do that, do you think?
Well, your branding isn't just your logo. Your logo is one part of it. And if you don't understand what your brand is all about, your clarity and your foundations of your brand, then and the audience you're talking to, then how are you going to design that logo that's going to appeal to those and attract those audiences that you really want to? So you've really got to know your why you set that business, what are your principles, who your target audience really is, and you really got to know them. And then you can get involved in color psychology. There's all the different sides that you can get involved in with branding. But it's no good you having a website, build a website just to put, when it's not actually talking to your clients. It's not about you, it's about your clients, and that's what you've got to talk about and build your brand up. Your logo is one, yes, it's recognizable and you'll need a logo, but that's one aspect of it. It's a very small aspect really of a whole brand.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful point of view and a really important one, because I think so many people, especially when they look to do marketing, they look, and I had another interview with a marketer yesterday, and we were talking about like how you go about actually creating that target audience, right? So who is that thing? Because I think when people start, they are in a position where they're like, I don't really know the demographic. I don't really know, I think sometimes some hurdles go like, do I have to really understand the really fundamentals of, they are 20, female, they have this occupation, they do this, etc. Like when you say target audience, is that what you mean? Or can it be more broad, and can it be more general?
It can be. You don't want to be general because you don't want to talk to everybody, because not everybody is your ideal customer, and they're not going to resonate with you depending on your business. But also you've got you can have multiple audiences or multiple avatars type thing. So sometimes you can have somebody that's in their 20s, female, but then you can resonate with somebody in their 40s or 50s. So you will target them in a different way. So you can have multiple types of avatars, but you should really, when you're doing a target or do like a marketing campaign, then you should be talking to one of them at one time, and then you can move to another campaign which is going to really target another of your avatars. You can have an overall feel of what that person, because at the end of the day probably their pain point is exactly the same. So that side is that you will be talking to them because you really know what their pain point is and you're the one that can solve it. So that is how you'd work your target audience in more than ways, but you can have multiple ones.
Because I think that kind of, to an extent, will remove some of the overwhelm, right? Because there's a lot of people who start with marketing who do market research, they kind of know who they're talking to, but they can't put it into a specific box, right? And that's why I always ask that question, because I think sometimes it's not always about necessarily having, you need a box, yes, but that box doesn't have to be so tiny and so detailed that you feel like you can't move forward with marketing, we can't actually have actionable things, which I'm sure we'll get into, because it's, there's that hurdle of being overwhelmed, or there's that hurdle of, oh my god, I don't have the exact detailed target that I need or exact detailed audience. But I mean, when we say marketing campaign, obviously that's made up with content, right? So I mean, my next question was going to be, from your perspective, have you seen certain types of content? Of course this changes across the board, like every week, every month, every year, I imagine, but have you seen there's kind of a trend on what people should start with? Because as you may know, some of the people who listen to the podcast, the majority of the people who listen to this podcast, are people who are starting out entrepreneurs, and the part of the goal for me is to create content which can serve those, really starting out people who maybe don't have a large budget to, say, bring you or me in to have a conversation about, okay, well, this is what we're going to do with marketing, this is how we're going to do it. But they still, because for them to grow a business, it's in our best interest for them to grow their business, so that then when they are at the size to justify bringing someone in to do it, then they can have that, they can have that appeal. So I think the question there is, how would you suggest people start creating a campaign or creating content or starting that ball rolling when it comes to marketing, specifically from your experience?
Honest, that's what Thriving Brand is all about. That is so that I don't do the work. If they want me to do it, I would do it. But at the end of the day, they are thinking it and getting out there, because they can't afford designers. They can't afford when they're first starting out. So you've got to be realistic, but they still need guiding. They've got to look. I mean, the one thing I always say to my clients is look at your competitors. Don't let it eat away at you, but have a look at your competitors to see, are they hitting your everybody's phoning me now. You've got to look at look at your competitors and see what they're doing right, but more importantly, what they're doing wrong. Are they, and look at how they are talking to your perfect clients. And don't copy them, but then you turn it round to your values, but you learn from what those other people doing. Because if you have got competitors, then you've got a business, because there is other people doing it. So there's a need for it. So yeah, just I'd first port of call is look at your competitors, see what they're doing and what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And then you can build your content around, not around them, but what is going on, and then you start knowing what your ideal audience are thinking about and what they want to read. And then you tailor it that's more your values.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because I think sometimes people are scared to look at what others are doing, right? Or in the position where, oh, I don't want to be spying on my competitors. But the fact of the matter is, we're not reinventing the wheel here, right? Like, what you do, what I do, what other marketers do, what other video companies do, etc., are going to be roughly the same or roughly similar in the respect to the core principles we're trying to teach. How we go about doing it and what we suggest and how, and our personalities and whether we gel with people, with our clients, is what's going to stand us apart, in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of people who find it sometimes very challenging and very overwhelming, as I say before, to go into that world. But what I really liked about what you were just mentioning is you can pick what you like and what you don't. That's what I was thinking about when you were mentioning it, because you can say, oh, I really like this bit, so I'm going to take this bit. But actually there's a way to do that slightly better. I mean, when it comes to like branding, I mean, you talked about understanding your values and understanding the color psychology and that kind of thing as well. How much do you feel the personal like, for me, for example, use my business as an example, my values and then Brunton Media's values, should they be connected? Should they be similar, or are they sometimes, or could they be separate? Because for me, I think it's important, if you're going to be a business owner and you're going to build a personal brand that's affiliated to another brand, that they should be quite similar.
Yeah, I mean, you started your business for a reason, and that your values are what made or making your business and watching it grow. They can develop and change slightly as your business grows. Because your value, but your core values, why you started that business, really are not going to change. You want to make sure you've got fantastic customer service, that you can develop and grow and find out all that information that's out there and learn and get new technology in there. And that's all part of it, of your business. And you want the best for your clients. So those principles are never going to really change, or they should never change. Because if they do change, you're falling out of love with your business and you're losing your way. So that should always be instinctive. Yeah, as your business grows and you get staff in and it's coming to a different way, then it is going to change slightly because you've got other people within your business. So your values, the main core missions and your values of your business, those people, your staff should take on, but they will put their own sort of part on it as well. So it will change as your business. Your brand should always be evolving as your business grows, but your values are the reason why you started that business. You're the business owner. So you should share those values with the people that are coming in, working in with you.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really important to mention, because sometimes, I mean, I've found as I've grown in business anyway nowadays that I'm like Marmite specifically. Some people are going to love me, some people are not going to like me. And that's nothing against my personality. It's just some people are going to click with me, some people aren't, right? And I think it's the same when you're looking at people you're going to work with, whether that's freelancers, subcontractors, employees, etc. However, whatever the way is that you go about doing that. But what we're talking about here is building culture, right? Like you're building culture within an ecosystem, or within a business, or to represent a business. And I think it's something which you as a business owner need to have true to yourself, because I'm sure you've had it, I've definitely had it, where there's times where there's a fork in the road and you have to make a decision which way, and they both kind of look appealing, or they both look kind of scary, right? And I think I mean, for me, I go back to my values and I ask myself, well, which one is closer for me to be in line with what the reasons why I started Brunton Media? Why did I start? What do we do as a company? And which road specifically is going to push me towards keeping to those things, but also moving to where I feel the vision it should be or wants to go. I mean, what would you say to people who are really struggling, say they are at a fork in the road? Because I think there's a lot of people, especially at the moment, where, we're looking at the recession's not looking 100%. There's not really that high of a buyer's market right now, where, quite a lot of the people I've been talking to, they're like, we have work, yeah, it's quieter than we would like. And it sounds like that's across the board right now. And I think there's huge opportunity there to do stuff that you otherwise couldn't, because you would be really, really, really busy with paying work, or things are really busy, or etc. I mean, is there like parts of your business where you've had that and you've had to make a kind of decision on, okay, well, how do I spend this time? And if you have, what advice would you give to people who are finding that issue at the moment?
I mean, any business goes through ups and downs. Anybody who says they've got a perfect business where they can keep it going and they're always busy, they're not telling the truth, really. Because there will always be times when you're quieter and then you go manic. So I find when I go and I can see that I've finished a contract or whatever, then I start thinking, I've got a plan. So I always are thinking ahead. I know what direction I want to go with my businesses now. But I will change direction if I see an opportunity. but to be honest, I go from the old fashioned gut feeling a lot of the time, because sometimes my gut will say, don't do it. And I go for it and something goes wrong. And I know a bit woo woo, I suppose, but it's usually right. And you get that feeling. It's like when you meet somebody, you know whether you're going to be able to do work with them or not. You know, you have that. People do business with people, and you either have it, like you're saying, some people like you, some people don't, and not everybody can like you. And I think it's when you start talking to people, you see whether you can gel with them. I mean, I've had clients over the years that have driven me nuts. And, we all have clients like that. And you keep on pleasing them and they take more and more and they start bleeding you dry. And in the end, you have to be true to yourself. And I've actually sacked a couple of clients where I'm bending over backwards for them, but they want more and more and more and more from you. And it's quite liberating when you can turn around and say, I'm really sorry, but I don't think it's working. This is a person, I can recommend, they might be the right fit for you or something like that. But you have to evolve as a business and change, and always looking to see what's going to happen, because especially with COVID, we've all had to adapt so much in a complete different way. I've been working with a group of restaurants, and when it was lockdown, obviously their businesses stopped. So they did like local boxes of food, and they sold what they would have been doing in the restaurant and did meals, and they actually made really good money, and they've kept all their customers and things like that. So it's always thinking out of the box. There will always be something happening that I mean, obviously COVID is one of those things that's been really unusual, but a lot of businesses have developed and looked at it and changed direction. And sometimes they won't go back to what they did before. They have moved forward. So sometimes it can be a good thing to take a risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah,
I think, yeah, I really resonate with the instinct point of view, because for me, everything I've done, even if it's a perceived risk, is because my instincts tell me now is the best time to do it, because there's an opportunity here, this makes sense, this works out. Or the opposite happens, as you were mentioning as well, where maybe you have a conversation with someone, or someone reaches out about doing some work with you potentially, and you just have this like sense, you can't put your finger on why, but something tells you, and you're like, don't think we're the right people for this person. And it's then up to you whether you choose to listen to that. But if you don't listen to that, and it repeatedly then ends up biting you down the line for whatever reason, financially, time investment, not the right brand, so on, that you're working with, then I think you'll learn to really truly understand your gut feeling and truly understand those instincts. Because I think we surprise ourselves as humans sometimes about how intuitive we can be to a situation, and we can be like, oh, okay, right. I mean, a lot of people have asked me about how we've pivoted during lockdowns and how we pivoted during COVID, but how I'm looking to pivot as we're coming out of COVID, or we're technically out of COVID, and we're in our new reality now, right? That's similar to the old one, but obviously there's different things in place, and we're a couple of years on. And what I always say is, I don't know the road that I'm going to walk on, but I know the direction, because I can feel it and I understand the vision, and I still have the ideal goal in my head, and I can sort of see through, and I can understand, and certain things will stick in my mind about a certain conversation with someone. And this is nothing against them as a person. It's just sometimes certain things, or there's certain attitudes or certain ways that they want to react as like, okay, that doesn't sit right with me. Okay, that's a bit worrying. Okay, well, that's a motivation. And I think part of business, and it reminds me of something that a good friend of mine said to me a while ago during lockdown, actually, and said, it's not, and I'd be interested in your opinions, because I'm starting to weave it into the podcast now, because I'm curious on other people's opinions on it. It's not businesses that pivot or survive a difficult situation. We use COVID as an example, but it's business owners. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it is literally, sometimes it can be lucky. You're in the right place at the right time. And it can be that like that. But I think it's you've got to be switched on as a business owner. You have to keep on looking and in some ways make your own luck, you know, that take those opportunities when you can. And it is up to you. You are the business owner. At the end of the day, if things go wrong, yes, things can go wrong and it's totally out of your hands, but it's your responsibility. You are the business owner. The book ends up with you at you. So you've got to, if you get advice from a business coach or whatever, you've still got to, it's your decision. So go with your gut, or go with looking at your finances, and you have to take a chance with a business no matter what. You can't just do everything going smoothly, because you'll never develop. You've got to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really important thing, and something that jumped to mind when you mentioned it, which is something I'm trying to do a lot more this year, is just say yes to things. Like, say yes to when I have an idea in my head. Oh yeah, Colin, you should create a video about this. Okay, cool. Yes, let's do it. What now? I'm going to physically do it. I'm not going to stop myself from doing it. I'm going to make it a priority, right? Oh, Colin, you're not 100% happy with how your physical health is. Okay, well, what are you going to do about that? Say yes to doing something about that. Oh, you want to get better at public speaking, for example, something I want to get better at this year. Okay, so say yes to opportunities, or put yourself in a position where you can then have opportunities to say yes to, that are going to mean I can do more public speaking, which by proxy will mean I can get better at public speaking, right? And I think
But then it'll help you with exposure within your business
well,
as
yeah,
well.
of course, that's a byproduct, right? But
yeah, that's a byproduct of it.
I think the core, and that's why people always ask me, I had a conversation about a talk I'm going to be giving later on this month, and they were asking me, oh, do you want us to pay you, or how does that work, right? Because some people assume, not wrongly, that that one should be paid for a talk. And I said, well, at the moment, if I'm honest, what it feels like to me is I'm trying to develop a skill. I'm going to film it to get content out of it. So I don't really feel like it's fair for me to also ask for you to pay me on top of that, because I'm already benefiting. Because basically what I'm doing is I'm showing up, pitching to a room, having conversations, and then going home. That's all I'm technically doing. But eventually it will get to the point where my profile and my exposure and how I do it and what I'm talking about is so high in demand that you should ask for money for that, and you should, because your time is then the bottleneck, right? So to justify it, you should technically ask. But at the beginning, I don't think you should. And I think it says a lot about business if you can do things for the good of the community, quote unquote, but it's on your terms, right? Like, people have said to me, well, why do you cover like Salisbury events, for example, or how does that make you money, or how does that help the business? And I'm like, well, firstly, it sometimes doesn't. Sometimes it hurts the business, right? In respect to I'm paying out for things that happen and etc. out of my pocket. But I don't have an issue with that, because it goes back to my values, and that's why I think, that's why I bring it up here, because it goes back to one of the core reasons about why I built Brunton Media in the first place, which was to promote the city I love so much and has given me so much to the wider market, to my network, to promote it better than I feel others are doing. And that's not necessarily just to mock them and etc., but it's to say that, hey, look, this is what I can do, and also it's a free bit of advertising, right? So whenever I create a video, technically it's a free bit of advertising, and I'm sure this kind of leads on to networking to an extent, because it is a form of networking. But my next question was going to be around networking, because I think so many starting business owners, they get kind of into the habit of, they do a good job, they get referrals, they do a good job, they get referrals, but they aren't. That's fine if you want to stay in your box, right? But how, from my perspective, the way that one has grown a business has been through having those conversations that then lead on to another conversation that then lead on to potentially having work from someone you've met in networking, maybe directly, or someone they know. So how did you personally, when you were looking at starting to network, because I know that's how we met, through networking, how did you get to the point where you were like, yes, I need to do networking and this feels comfortable? Because I think that's the key to networking.
Yeah, because when you first go networking, it's really hard. It's very daunting, especially if you do 1-minute pitch or whatever. But it grows. I mean, it's building those relationships with people. It's getting to know one-to-ones with people are brilliant. You learn more about them and you build relationships and the communications there. So whatever network you're doing, make sure that you start to do those one-to-ones as well and build the communication, and it's the trust like factor, isn't it, again? So yeah, I would definitely, when I first started Thrive Studios, I did loads and loads of networking because I was freelance for 10 years. So, and I wasn't allowed to own the work. It belonged to the agencies. So I couldn't put it in my portfolio to the same extent and things like that. So I had a very basic portfolio. So when I was, especially because I was doing graphic design more then, every network I went to, because it was all face to face, I used to bring an A3 sheet with what I'd done. So it was a project that I'd done, whether it was a logo or if it had been a brochure, I'd bring the brochure and say, look, this is what I've been doing. So because it's a physical thing and it's a visual thing, people started to connect with me because they liked my designs. So that's how I started. It developed quite quickly because they could see what I was capable of doing. It's very hard when I've worked with clients and they haven't got a physical product or service. So it has to be word of mouth with that a lot more, especially like a Reiki or massage, sports massage. You've got to get them in there to actually know what you do. So it's very hard networking because it has to be referrals and recommendations with those sort of people. So it's very different depending, every business is, as we said, is different.
Yeah, of course. But I think there's two ways I would approach that. I mean, one, that's where the visual content element can come in. So that's video, photos, that kind of thing, because then you can start really explaining and showing and teaching why you do what you do, how you do what you do. But then also, would you say that it's then good to build, then you should go to the approach, if you're going to do networking specifically, that you're building the personal brand as you're the expert in that field. So you're not necessarily showcasing how to do massaging or the fact you're showcasing the fact you are someone who does sports therapy or sports massage or etc., but you're not focusing on the physical action. Does that make sense?
Well, that's the personal brand. That's personal branding then, because you're building your persona and what you can do, and you can describe how it's going to make life easier or stop the pain. Somebody who's got
sometimes in quite literally, yeah. I mean, in my head it went to pain points, but actually in the sports side of things, actual physical pain as well. This is an interesting question that's just come to mind. What would you say is more important for a brand at the start then? To build a business brand that doesn't have a face attached to it, or a personal brand?
Again, it depends on your business. I would say there'll be certain businesses that is, especially when you're first starting a business, it's just you. So you are building that personal interface. So personal branding is so important. And social media now, it's quite personal. It's a social thing. You are putting yourself out there. So it's good to actually put your face out there because people will start recognizing you. There's certain businesses that it's the business, it's the ethos, but every business when they start off, it's just you or you and a partner. So it is personal. So it's good, but your business will grow into a business brand. But it's, you look at Branson, he's the face of Virgin and he's the personal brand of it. But he's sort of left a lot of parts of those businesses. But Virgin is still, when you think of Virgin, you instantly think of him.
Yeah. I think it builds but moving back to culture and moving back to vision again, I think that's where that comes from, right? The people. But I think that when you are building a personal brand, what sometimes happens, and we find this a lot with video, is people are scared to get in front of the camera. They're scared to have their face out there. They're scared to talk about what they do to strangers, which the majority of the time at the start is what happens in networking, or what happens on the street, or what happens when someone recognizes you. How did you personally either help your clients or personally with your own personal brand help overcome that fear? Because I think so many business owners, we can sit here all very well and say, yeah, you should do this. Yeah, this is great for your brand. This is, but we're seasoned, quote unquote, in doing it, right? Because we've been doing it for as long as we've been doing it. But I think what's valuable here is understanding how we got to being seasoned, right? Outside of doing it, quote unquote. I mean, that's obviously a way, but is there anything else that you would add to help with people that are getting very anxious, very worried, very fearful of maybe something simple like being on a live stream or being on this podcast or being on camera, so to speak?
I'm working with a lot of, I'm working with a lot of women at the moment. They're in their 45, 50s and early 60s, and they are terrified of putting themselves out there. And I'm coaching them, so I do a little bit of mindset work with them as well. But I get them to practice on their phone doing a video and do small steps. You don't have to do a video every day on Instagram or Facebook or whatever you want to do it on. But practice it. You don't have to, if you're not, but it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. Be you. And when I first doing it, I made stupid mistakes. But that's how you grow and you learn. Your first videos are always not good when you look back at them, but that was a learning process. But it's a little steps. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. And at the end of the day, we put too much pressure on ourselves. But everybody else who sees it doesn't see those little problems that we think are massive. They just want to know what you're talking about. So I try and help them a little bit of confidence and just slowly build them up. Don't terrify them. Don't say, right, you need to do video, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's doing small steps at a time to give them a little bit more confidence. And when you've actually done it once or twice, you're not as frightened. You think, oh no, I've done it now. And you do the next step. And it's just not overloading people.
Yeah, I really agree. And I think so much of what we do now on digital and so on, we're very quite quickly pushed towards, you have to post daily, you have to put more content out, because we're in the content age, right? Like back when I started, wasn't as much content going on. Yes, social media existed, of course it did, but it wasn't so prominent on, you have to have a video presence, you have to have a podcast, you have to have this, you have to have that, you have to have this. And I think pulling that back, you still don't have to have that. Yes, in an ideal world, having video, having a consistent social media presence, etc., all these things are great. But as you say, you're going to get overwhelmed if you try and bite off everything quickly.
If yeah.
I
always say to my clients, don't go on every single platform. Concentrate on one platform to start off with when you're first starting your business that your clients are sitting, whether it's LinkedIn or it's Facebook or it's Instagram or TikTok, but really concentrate on one. Get that, so you get building those audiences that you're getting the interest, then start building on the next one. But if you're going to do all of them all in one go, you will burn yourself out.
Yeah, and I think it's the same analogy when you do anything, right? Like we could use the analogy of running a marathon. You don't wake up one day and go, I want to run a marathon.
I'm going to do 26 miles tomorrow.
Go and run 26 miles, do you?
Yeah, you slowly build it up. Yeah.
You say, okay, this week I'm going to try and do this. Okay, next week I'm going to try and do this. Then I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do this. And then after a couple of months, okay, then let's try and do the 26 miles. That's the point with the content. That's the point with marketing. That's the point with anything. And I really resonate with when you talked about being you, because something that we notice a lot as well is so many people are like, oh, but I look stupid. Oh, but I sound stupid. Oh, but my hair looks a mess. Oh, etc., etc., etc. And I think what they're leading in, or potentially leaning into, is the perceived, maybe self, like, oh my god, I don't like this part of me, part of them, or the quote unquote hate they might receive, right? In the respect to because everyone who does content for long enough will eventually get to the point where you get some person online who says, oh, this thing is wrong. And I don't just mean in like a feedback perspective, as in they're just trying to be annoying and they're trying to be nasty. I mean, have you had that, firstly? And then secondly, if you have, how did that affect what you were doing? But then how did you overcome if it did affect what you were doing? Like, did you get any like vile, like quote unquote vile hate, or anything that was like, there's no benefit even to be made here? Because for me, I see them as different. One is constructive criticism that, hey, you can do this better, and I'm going to try and support you in being able to do it better. And then there's others that's like, I'm just being a keyboard warrior for the sake of it.
Well, I mean, I'd probably say it's a bit personal now, but I ended up, unfortunately, I've just come out of an abusive marriage. So I had the demons anyway. So I had self-doubt because I was married to somebody who was mentally abusing. So I do have my demons. So at one time, I think anybody who criticised me, I would take it so to heart. I've come through that because I'm out of the marriage and found me again. So now I look at it, if you have negative publicity, it shows you're actually, your voice is being heard. So it's not a bad thing. And not everybody is going to align with your values. So they will always there'll be always people that have got their own opinion. So you've just got to keep with what you believe in, and just follow your heart. At the end of the day, it's not. There is going to be nasty people out there. There is going to be people that are going to say horrible things. You sort of see. I mean, I've got my niece is married to a footballer. The absolute hate she gets on social media is unreal, and it's jealousy, or and you are always, social media can be a fantastic thing, but can be a very negative thing as well, and you've just got to shut your eyes to it in some ways and just keep with what your values are and who you are, and they'll get bored eventually.
Yeah. I mean,
But yeah, it's getting reaction.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you for sharing that, firstly, but secondly, I think it's really important perspective to have, and I know there's lots of people who talk about it, but something that I've started to establish now in my own life is cocooning myself around. I'm in my own little world. That's okay. That's what I'm trying to do, and that does have the byproduct of I don't necessarily hear the cheering as well, but I think that's actually the benefit, because then I'm neutral. I'm not down when I've got bad feedback and up when I've got good. Of course, there's natural ebb and flows of a business, as we discussed all the way out through this conversation. But I think that the core of it is about being in a position where you can be religiously consistent in what you're going to do and what you're looking to achieve, because that's how you're going to get there, right? Like, we'll use the gym analogy again. If you want to get in shape, working out for an hour once isn't going to get you in shape. Working out for 20 minutes a day, or 40 minutes a day, or 30 minutes a day, whatever you want to do, for an extended period of time is going to be the thing that gets you into shape. It's the same when you grow a business.
But you've got to be very careful that you're not too blinkered in the business. Because that's what I found with some clients, that they're so focused on one avenue within their businesses that they're not looking outside. They're too focused, and sometimes you need people, a coach or something, to look as an outside. I when I'm doing websites for clients, obviously I don't build the websites, I design them and do the user experience and things like that when I'm working with them. But they're writing those copies too technical sometimes, and they're too, like I will go on about like CMYK or RGB or things like that. Majority of people haven't got a clue what that means, but I've lived and breathed that for 30 years. So it's second nature to me. And I think that's the problem that some businesses are like. They're too involved in their business. So they're too blinkered to know what's going on outside. And it's good to get somebody to look at it at your business from an outside point of view sometimes.
Yeah, of course. No, of course, and I think it's important to have those right people. But when I talk about cocooning, I mean keeping your circle to who you believe and trust to do that job, right? I completely agree. I completely agree that you should have that. But I think so much of our lives, especially on social, is that we're trying to be liked by people we don't technically like, or by people who we're trying to get likes, quite literally, from people who we don't even know necessarily. And there's nothing technically wrong with that, but it is a bit disingenuous, because I would rather have people who are really close to me think I'm a badass and have 3 people who like me than 27 people who like, yeah, I'm not really fussed, if I'm honest, Colin. And it's like, for me, I'd rather keep my circle small, but those people are exactly who are going to push me in the right directions and give me the critical feedback and have my complete trust, instead of having a larger, wider circle that maybe I don't in the same way. And that's, I think, the distinguishing point between that. And that's why I think, to an extent, you have to cocoon yourself, though, especially if you're trying to have something arguably that you need to be obsessed. To grow a business, you need to be obsessed with it, right? That's the reality, right? You need to be. You need to live and breathe it. It needs to be a lifestyle. It's not this thing you can just turn off. I'm not saying there isn't times where you can turn it off. Of course there is. But you're never actually going to turn off in your brain, right? Every entrepreneur I've ever spoken to, every business owner I've ever spoken to, they've constantly got their brain whirring around about ideas. They've constantly got their brain thinking, hey, we should do this. Hey, this is a cool idea. Hey, this is this. Hey, this is this. What about doing this? What about this? What about this? And what can happen sometimes, you have too many of those ideas. And that's when those other people can come in and say, whoa, chill out. You're trying to do too much. Right? Or, hey, they are really great ideas, but let's take a step back for a minute. I
mean, I have got a lot of my clients to write a journal now, whether it's on Trello or whatever, on the computer, or they want to handwrite it, and just put, when they think of an idea, put it down there, because the amount of times we come out with ideas, especially stupidly in the middle of the night, and you end up, you forget by the time you woke up in the morning, and then you're beating yourself up about it. So I'm really sad I've got a notebook by my bed. So if I do wake up, I scribble it, or I do on my phone on Otter, and just speak it. And then it's not, and then I'll probably go back to sleep again. But I've got it out there so I don't forget. So I think it's, and like you're saying, you need to surround yourself with like-minded people, because they will help you and they will have your back. And, business owners, it's like the network we go on. There's some fantastic people that are really knowledgeable about certain situations, and you're bouncing ideas off each other. When you're out working on your own, it's really good to have that.
Yeah, it's really important to have that's what I was going to say. It's really important to have that level of community around you, right? Whether that's a network, whether that's a set of friends, whether that's a coach, whether it's a combination of all the above. I think it's powerful. I think one of the reasons why I've seen loads of businesses grow, and also myself have grown, is because I have that community, and I'm trying to build that community around what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it with the people who believe in it, and they can understand why I'm doing it, and they like what I'm doing, and they, it's a mutual beneficial relationship, right? I support you, you support me. Excuse me. I support you, you support me. And that's, in theory, how it works, right? But I'm not expecting necessarily you to 100% support me. From a networking point of view, I should be doing it from a perspective, I want to genuinely help you, And if I get something back from it, great, fantastic, but that's not the reason why I'm doing it. That's not with the obligation of it needing to be something, because I personally believe that if you just do good stuff for long enough, karma will work everything else out for you. And it won't necessarily be from the person that you did all the good things for. It might just be through an opportunity that then arises itself.
But they will talk about
and I
you,
think
because you've given that little bit of away, you've been very open, honest with them, that they don't forget that. So they will start, if somebody comes up and says, oh, I need a video, speak to Carlton. Because you started that interaction and built those relationships with those people, so that you want to be in the front of their mind.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I want, like, front of my marketing, but it's something which has been really interesting because I've started really leaning into it. And just today alone, I've had 2 conversations with people, and I got an email from someone as well today saying, oh, hey, I've just met so-and-so and they're looking to start a podcast. I thought it would be good for you two to have a conversation. Not even necessarily that we get work out of it, but they know I run a podcast because they were a previous guest, and they've introduced me someone who might be a potential guest, but also is just looking to do a podcast. I'm like, yeah, of course. This is some of the equipment. They were looking at an equipment question, right? So I was like, okay, yeah, this is the mic I'd recommend. This is probably what else you're going to need, etc. Here's another cheaper option if that's without your budget. I didn't want to probe too much, but the principle I'm making there is, and you'll slowly realize when you're building a brand, and I think this is why I'm bringing it up today, is you'll suddenly click that actually people who maybe you don't have an initial connection, but you can you catch up with, like I catch up with someone who I met like properly firstly like 3-4 years ago, and because of COVID and such, we just haven't had a chance. We haven't been able to get something because we've both been really busy, and we've been like, yeah, we need to catch up, and it's taken us like 6 months to actually catch up. We got up today. And she ended up telling me that actually she was one of the people who forwarded me some work that we did last year, and I originally thought that was only like one person, and then I'm now finding out like 6 different people who are not connected at all were saying when that person needed it. I'm assuming they asked around their network, and everyone went, oh yeah, you should talk to Colton, for example, just using them as a video as an example. But for me, I think that's the power of building a brand. And building a personal brand specifically, because you get known for the good work you do, and you get known for the quality and the service, and it's so much more than just a video. In my case, it's how I go about it, how I treat it, how much do I care about that client's outcome, all of those other things, which I think arguably are actually more important than the actual physical article, video. Would you say?
Well, you think that's what brand is? Brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That is what branding is. It's that emotional connection that you're building up. So doing that, you have to give percentage out there, your knowledge and free tips. Don't give too much away though. Because you want them as a client as well. And you've got to put your business head on.
I'm definitely privy to giving too much away. I hate to break it to you. I'm way too generous, but that's fine. I don't mind.
I give too much away because I love it when people are growing and they're developing and they fall in love with a business and they're passionate about it again. So I get excited about that. So I'm like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. And I'm thinking, no, sometimes I have to talk to myself and say, right, Lisa, you're giving too much away. It's a business. You've got to think sometimes. So it's a fine line in some ways.
Yeah, I think it really depends on, though, how you want to make your money, right? Like for us, could I consult? Yeah, of course I could. Do I consult? Yes, I do. But is it the main thing I'm trying to sell? Not really. So actually, by me over-delivering from a consulting point of view, it's more likely someone's going to come back to me in 6 months and go, actually, Colton, you seem to know your shit when it comes to video. So could we have a conversation about video, please? So I think for me, it's very business orientated. I think for us specifically, I don't have an issue with that because it pays itself in dividends over multiple periods of time. Every time I seem to have done it. I can't think of a time where I've over quote unquote delivered. And again, maybe it's not that person like passing me on work, but what I'm talking about here is the karma ecosystem has handed me something which has to have come from some level of branding work, some level of marketing work. It has to. There's no other reason, because why else would have because anyone doing their due diligence will ask around, and if the same name comes up 6 times, then clearly they might be quite good at what they do. If 6 different people are saying, hey, you should talk to this person. I mean, for me, that was kind of everything I wanted to discuss today, and I'm conscious of time, so I think let's wrap up soon. But is there anything that you want to throw in as a topic, or anything that you want to ask me specifically? Because I like to add this on the end, because we've had some guests who tell me afterwards, I had a dying question I wanted to ask you, so I've added it into the to the end of the episode, just to give you an opportunity, if you do have one, to ask me something, if you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you go in the right direction, because you're being you and you're keeping what it is. And that is what I say to most of my clients is, as we said, be you. Because don't look at your competitors and thinking they're doing really well, I want to be like them, because you're not being true to who you are. So you've got to, depending how you want your business to grow, then yes, stick with your own values, and which is what you're doing, which is my principles as well. People will work with me because of me, not because of my background, or part of it is my background as well, I suppose, because I've got years of experience, but it's because who I am and how I approach them, how you come across, that is what they're gonna warm to me or not warm to me. So yeah, it's be true to yourself and be you.
Yeah, I think that's a really great place to end. I mean, where people, if they want to carry on this conversation, they want to sort of check out some of your work, maybe have a conversation with you personally. I mean, where is best for people to reach out to do that?
You can follow me on my Instagram, which is at Thriving Brand. I put loads of tips on there and things like that about branding. You can go on my website. If you're a lady in your 40s, 50s and 60s, you can join my Facebook group, which is Thriving Brand, Thriving You. But then I work with a lot of men as well, so I'm not I do both. But yeah, just have a look. Thrive Studios is the design side, but I do consultancy with that as well. But yeah, Thriving Brand is the one for more coaching and that sort of side.
I hope you took value from that episode, ladies and gents. I will be back very, very soon with a brand new episode of the podcast, where we'll be talking to someone very, very exciting and very influential as well, because I've got a couple of videos and a couple of podcasts already filmed that I'm just going to be getting through the editing on and being able to release to you guys, so you can be informed by people who aren't just me and people who I know in my network as well. So thank you ever so much for joining once again. If you did enjoy this video and would like to see more like it, make sure to be subscribed, and I'll see you very soon with some brand new content talking about marketing, video, branding, or a combination of all the above. Have a wonderful day, evening, or night, and I'll see you very, very soon.